Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat with Girija. My name is Girija Patel. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I am a podcaster. I am an educator. I am a businesswoman. I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a lawyer. I truly believe in the power of mentorship through storytelling, and that's what Law Chat is all about. So whether you are in 6 months or 10 years of business experience, we can all learn from each other's experiences because we face the same challenges and we have the victories and we have mistakes that we're all making. So why not lean into them and know that we're going to be fine and we're going to be okay and we're going to be inspired. And of course, this is Law Chat with Girija, so we will be talking about some law at some point during the conversation. And if you love what you hear today, which I know you will, then subscribe to Law Chat with Girija and share the love. So grab your coffee, sparkling water, or wine, and let's dive in to the next inspiring mentorship session. Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat. Do you ever wish you had more hours in the day or just basically getting your done and more of it rather than just a little bit of it? Well, my guest today, Angela Proffitt, is an award-winning 8-figure entrepreneur and a founder and CEO of GSD Creative. From being a nonstop working overachiever in the morgue and mental hospital to building a global luxury event and wedding empire to reinventing herself and to go to productivity consulting, speaker, author, podcast host. There's so many things that you have done. Angela is nothing short of a goal crusher or somebody who is getting her done. Now, all the while she's doing this, she is dancing, she is smiling. And if you are ever watching her on her Instagram, which you should be, and we'll share that with you later, you will see how she's dancing her way through so many different cities. I just can't. It is the funniest thing and the cutest thing all at the same time. So welcome, Angela, to Law Chat. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Oh, me too. So FYI, we have been chatting for 30 minutes prior to this about all other things. And we talked about her travels. And I was just saying like, oh my gosh, I love seeing you dance in front of the pyramids, or I love seeing you dance in front of all these random places that are so fun and you want to go. But more than anything, I remember her dancing and I remember what she is doing, and it brings joy. It brings joy to people watching. And I know we were talking about your strategy behind that and the effect and the impact that you're trying to have on the viewership. But at the same time, I just find it like so joyful and I love it. I love seeing it. And we were talking about all things about weddings and Indian weddings and whatnot. But Angela, tell us, this is not where you started, clearly. So how did it all?
No. Well, when I started, social media did not exist. Okay. Like at all. It was just like old school. Like I did not grow up around entrepreneurship. Like my parents were not entrepreneurs. Now my family had a wedding venue on the Gulf Coast in Mississippi. And so in the summers, like my uncle ran it and all of our family worked there. And we would spend the summers there, like pouring sweet tea and cutting pie and cutting wedding cake. But you don't think of it as a kid, like all these knacks that you just pick up while you're around, like all the flowers being done, all these things. And I loved people. Like I knew I wanted to help people. And, I got closer and closer to graduation. People were like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I guess I'll just be a nurse. Like, I don't know. Although I hate needles and blood, but I did gymnastics with this girl, which at the time she was 30. I was a competitive gymnast and I taught for many years and she was a student of mine. And I was young and I'm like, oh, she's 30. That's so old. Like, I hope I can tumble like that when I'm 30 years old. And then I tried and I broke my shoulder. But anyway, that's a different story. But she worked at a morgue and she knew I was going to nursing school. And she's like, you should come here and work. And I asked my parents and my mom's like, that would be a great thing. And to get nursing credit. And my dad's like, I just don't think that's a good idea. They never told me it was with dead people. Okay. Like, so that's like, and the reason I tell this story is because relationships matter and people matter and putting people first matters. And so, we had this great relationship and then I walk in, I'm like, this is with dead people, but listen, I kicked ass in anatomy. So it was like, okay. But that was my first like healthcare job. And then after I changed my major after doing clinical rotations on live people because I don't like to inflict pain. And so I changed my major to psychology. It's the best thing I ever did because I worked in a mental hospital. I worked in an AIDS clinic. I was a therapist. And it taught me a lot about people. And it taught me a lot about myself. First, to understand how people perceived me. And then understanding that what you see on the outside and then what's really going on the inside is two very different things. And, you hear it all the time, but when you sit in a room with someone who is mentally ill or they've just suffered a short-term tragedy and they, tried to kill themselves, like really sick, serious things. But on the side, this whole time, my parents' friends' kids started to get married. So I started to plan weddings. Pinterest, none of that existed back then. Designers, that wasn't a thing. So we just started doing it at our church for fun, me and my sister, for a couple of years. And then people started to ask, they're like, I'm not Catholic. Can you come here? Can you come here? And then that turned into, I'm not getting married in Nashville. I'm getting married in another city. And then that turned into another country. And then that turned into private islands. So it's like all of that was before social media. And again, the reason I say that and bring it up is because now to connect through all these relationships, through these social channels, people complain about, oh, it's so much, it's so overwhelming. I'm like, to me, like, yes, it's another thing, but you have an opportunity to connect with people all over the world if you're really intentional and you put a strategy behind it. Right. I didn't know what a freaking strategy was when I started, so it's just over the years. And then when Facebook and Twitter, all that stuff started to come out because I love technology, I was always on the forefront of it, but I love technology because of something bad that happened. Like my computer crashed right before I graduated college and my professor did not care, but I had 6 months worth of notes and clinicals from patients that I had to turn in to graduate. He's like, if you don't turn in the notebook, the 3-ring binder of 6 months worth of notes, like you're not graduating. And I don't like school. Like I like to learn the things that I want to learn. And I'm like, oh, hell no. So, I stayed up and I produced it, but I lost everything. And back then it was called floppy drives. And then it was like jump drives. And so I never wanted to feel that way. And then my car was broken into. My planner was stolen the next week, which I didn't know what to do the next day. My life is not important back then, but it really set me up of the mindset that like, what's this iCloud thing? And I mean, no one was using Google Drive or Dropbox back then. Like it was just starting to come out, but that bad situation taught me how to reframe. And I mean, here we are 20 years later and I've made a business out of it. Really teaching people that don't wait for a tragedy and don't wait for something bad to happen to you. You can prevent these things, but most business owners, like we're all so busy taking care of other people, we don't stop and like take care of ourselves. And that's something that I've really been in tune to for many, many years, not because of me, but because I joined an organization called EO, Entrepreneur Network, and really surrounded myself with the right people who have done it and who were way older than me, not just in age, but experience in business. And I listened to them and I started to implement some of the things that they would teach me and it worked. And then I started teaching, some of it. And then every year things change, things evolve, social media evolves. And that's the thing as an entrepreneur, like you really have to have dedicated space and capacity to think outside of the box of like, okay, what's happening this year? What do we need to do next year? Because you're the leader and everyone's looking at you for everything. And if you think about it, it's a lot of pressure. But at the same time, it's like, that's why we get up and do what we do every single day, is to, help people and just have fun with life. Life is way too short. So it's like, have fun and do things that you want to do, but you got to put a goal. You got to put a deadline. It's got to be measurable, smart goals. And not too many goals. And that was always my problem for so many years because I am an overachiever. I've learned to scale back and I've learned that one big thing a quarter, one big thing a year, and service the clients, but you also have to grow the business. So it's been a really fun ride. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I love how you began and then your journey, how it took you to something that was very like clinical. Constantly you're reading books and, it's very in that realm. And then it just switched over to just so much creativity and the ability to just express yourself in a way that is, I think, in my opinion, very contrast to what you were doing before. But you've carried over the education and what you learned into what you're doing now. Like just the simple fact of, keeping in mind about the mental health and your health and keeping yourself at focus also. I think a lot of times we forget that. And it's so important. I loved how you talked about, just you kind of briefly talked about it, but as CEOs or leaders of a company, owners of a company, we needed to dedicate time where there's a lot of professional growth that we're doing for ourselves. We're educating ourselves for what's coming up and not just kind of staying in the old ways. And, because you'll plateau. And of course, growth is oxygen to your business. It is. And so, it's like, it's very necessary. And this is something I sometimes struggle with too, is because I feel like, gosh, I'm just spending all this time planning. And I love planning, but sometimes I'm like, gosh, I'm spending so much time doing this and I'm taking away time from other things that I could be doing, which is implementation or client work. But then it's like, if you are the leader and the CEO of your company, that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're a visionary and you need to plan. You need to set up those goals. You need to set up the thought process and the thought leadership in your business.
And if you are the one implementing and executing everything, you'll never grow.
Yeah.
And usually we get, I was in my own way. We get in our own way because we think, at least I did for many years, no one can ever do it like me. Like they're never going to care as much. And you hear that, no one's going to care about your business like you, but you can't grow, you can't scale. And some people, that's okay. They want to be a 1 or a 2 man show, but it's also really risky, especially, depending on your profession. I mean, usually people in the creative industry, they're spending a lot of money, but it's an investment, for the future to build up things. And it's so important to, people don't understand, like I'll go away to Cabo, for 2 weeks in December. And sometimes by myself, like during the pandemic, I'm still traveling by myself because my team members can't always go, mainly because of the pandemic. But it's like we manage, we Marco Polo each other, which is a video texting app. We, have a process and a system in place so that when I am gone, which is most of the time, we can still stay on track with like our clients and everything. But that all comes with learning how to delegate, understanding how you're perceived as a leader, and then understanding how your people need to hear it, which is a whole different story. And so constantly that self-development is so important. And right now more than ever, it's so important because things have shifted so much and behaviors and patterns. And even the other day, we're looking at some client analytics and then like my own analytics. And most, like before the pandemic, I would say 90% plus, like in our analytics, everything is from a phone. And a lot of our users, like they're iPhone users. I teach Apple classes, so that makes sense. But now we looked the other day, like 82% was all coming from a desktop computer and all coming from a laptop. It's no longer coming from the phone because people are still at home working. And like, if you don't shift your user experience, like from your website and all your social stuff to where your people are going, you could be losing out on opportunities and business. And it's highly unlikely that you're going to have somebody in your company come to you and say, hey, I'm seeing these analytics and, we're losing out on XYZ, like, unless, they know that from a former company. So a lot of these things we've learned the hard way, but, I'm thankful for it.
Yeah.
The other thing is we lead with emotion a lot of times, and which is like not a great thing to do as a business leader. So the numbers are black and white. There's no gray, and it can keep a company profitable, if you follow and watch the numbers. It's not the funnest or the sexiest, but it's just important to know that what you're doing is actually making an impact, and you're tracking it and you understand what the user experience is.
Yeah, I like that focus on analytics, but then also being able to translate it in a way that makes sense for your business. And I think a lot of times we just kind of skip over that and we're like, oh, I don't understand what that percentage means or whatever, especially the numbers, the financials. They tell a story. It's just like if you ask any accountant who is doing, amazing things for businesses, they will tell that. They will say that you don't look at it just as a number. Is telling a story of your business, is telling the financial health of your business also, and then where you can grow into or where you kind of need to press pause, fill it in, and then grow into. But being able to like translate those analytics takes practice, takes experience also. Now I'm going to rewind a little bit. I know that you started your wedding business by, in your church, and then you started helping others who were asking. But then how did that evolve into a
luxury wedding event planning business to where you are today?
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately. And they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now back to our awesome conversation.
Yeah. So really, I would say things started to really shift and change in 2010 when Pinterest started to become a thing and people started to like tag and pin things that they really like. And, we used to rip out magazine pictures and take them to boards.
Yeah.
And then I got an iPad, like the very first iPad. And I started to make like digital mood boards, and everybody's like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then, so it's just evolving over time. But also too, I would say like the big thing for me, and it just takes one where you do a good job at something. And so, I'm from Nashville. I grew up in Nashville. I live in Nashville. People call it Music City, USA. A lot of country music. There's a lot more than country music here, but we work with a lot of artists. We work with singers, people that are in the public eye, and people that are in the music industry, but behind the scenes. And so there was someone that had been on American Idol, which I didn't grow up with TV. I don't watch TV. My dad was an undercover drug detective. And so we were very sheltered as children. And I didn't really understand that till I went off to college. And I was like, damn, I'm really
so
effing
cool.
sheltered. I don't know some basic things, but I know like I can shoot and load every gun and teach you how to clean it. Like, it's just so random, right? But that's just, how I grew up. And so I don't really know who people are. Like, I don't look in magazines. I don't get them. I just don't. And so when someone reached out to me, they're like, we're going to shoot a TV show on TLC. And I'm like, I don't really care about being on TV. Like, some of my friends had already done that. And it kind of wasn't great for their reputation. And so, I just don't really care about that. And I think about like long-term reputation, like management control. And I also dated a guy who owned a production company for many years. And I also see how they edit and they twist and build up these stories that are so not true. Like, come on, y'all. Reality TV is freaking scripted. But they were like, well, this is with a singer-songwriter and her husband is a songwriter, and we want you to go on the road with them and plan their wedding. And I'm like, well, I work at the hospital too. And so I thought about it, like not that long. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I'm like, I'm going to get on the bus and go with them. I'll resign from healthcare, and then I can always go back, like if it doesn't work out. And that was in 2010. And so we shot this huge production for this show. And a month before the wedding, it was actually the week of Thanksgiving. It was snowing like crazy outside. And she called and said, can you come over? We need to tell you some things. And they wouldn't give me the guest list. I'm like, we're not going to have anybody show up. Like, we have to send out invitations. She's like, I don't want to invite anybody. Like, we're not close to, like, this is the music industry. We're not super close to a lot of these people. She's like, my family's a cluster. She was very open in the media about it. And she's like, I just want it to be me and him, like somewhere on a private island where no one knows who I am. And in my head, I'm like, what the freak is a private island? Like, I don't know what that is. I'm like, okay, well, she's like, you're not mad? And I'm like, no, why would I be mad at you? She's like, well, we don't want to do the show. They're not following protocol. Like, we don't want this to be like this fake thing. They're very Christian and very spiritual. And she's like, it's about us and God, not all these other people and not this TV show. So we went through lawsuits and like all this stuff. Long story short, the show was canned, and I found somehow through relationships from going to a conference, someone who managed a private island in Antigua. It's called Jumbie Bay. And so we went there and, flew in on this little plane. I'd never been on anything like that. But once I got there, I'm like, I can do this. Like, they had the 5-star service. totally down, but what they didn't have down was how to treat the luxury bride who wants privacy. And so, I just started to share some things with them about psychology. And then they're like, can you come back and like work with our staff? So that's how the whole consulting thing started.
Wow.
It's like I was just sharing with
That's
them.
incredible.
And I mean, it's such a tiny little island, but there were so many things happening. And then I came back to Nashville. Our town flooded. It was a nightmare. We had 8 displaced weddings in May of 2010. And so while, I felt like, okay, I'm on top of the world. I have all these private islands, like reaching out to do all these amazing, intimate weddings. But then in my hometown, it's like, it was terrible.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm in a bad dream. But our town and our community always pulls together. We replanned everything. So, but that was kind of the start of 2 really big things in the same year. That was like, for me, the flood brought me opportunity to teach my vendors how to be paperless. They would never listen to me until they lost all their shit. And it all floated away. And they're like, we're not worried about Angela's folders. Every event had a folder because all of her stuff is in this thing called the cloud.
Yeah.
And so I started teaching classes on Sundays, locally to vendors that would listen. And then finally, that started taking off. And then I got asked to speak. So there was never a strategy behind it. It was just me wanting to provide value. And, when you help someone, to me, that makes me feel useful and it gives me purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kept talking, and I talk a lot. And I'm like, if people will listen, I'm going to show you how to, like, people that sit next to me on the plane, which this hasn't happened in a while because, usually the middle seat's open now. But if someone has a Mac and like they're just pounding on their trackpad, or like I see that their battery's going low and like all their backlight stuff is on, and I'm like, can I just show you a few things? Like my team, they're like, you're going to get punched one day. Like you're so going to get punched. But it's just like, if you know something, why, even if people don't ask for the information, it's like I have built a whole business around just sharing, this information, not having the attitude of like, oh, they're going to steal my secrets and like, go do it like me. Like, no one is like you. No one will ever do it like you. And life experience, brings you up to par. But if you don't keep up with things, like you said earlier, like you just kind of die out. And I think that's one thing. I like change. I get really bored. And so that works in my favor, that every year I'm like, okay, what's new? What's new on social media? What conferences are out there? And I mean, now we do strategic planning, not only for ourselves, but with other people. And again, it's just hard because you're so close to it.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I've learned the hard way is like when you're so close to things, you're not clear publicly. And then that creates confusion. And so being really clear on what you're doing, what you're providing, and how you can help people, the money comes. Like it does. Like the money comes, the opportunities come. And, some of this stuff is so new, we don't know how to handle it. But, those of us who want to go out there and be the guinea pigs and fail fast, you learn from it and you pick up, and then it just makes you better and stronger. Right. So it's like, be a risk taker. And there's going to be things that work out and things that don't work out. But I would say, that was the one huge pivotal moment for me because it opened up my whole world to not even understanding. Like I didn't have a passport. I'd never been to another country. I didn't think about it. I just said yes and went and did it and, was me. And then somehow all this education stuff started. When here's the thing, when people are asking for something, if your audience is asking for something, split test it. Don't just do it and react, because people putting their money where their mouth is 2 different things. It's like, oh, that's like a good idea. And surrounding yourself with the right people who are not like you, which is the really important part, which is hard for leaders because sometimes I'm tired. I don't want to be challenged. I don't want to hear it. Like, I just want to do it and get it done, which is the wrong attitude to have. It's like, no, slow down, split test it. Let's make sure this is actually going to do well before you create all these things. And my team, and again, it's very strategic. My team is very strategic based on the way their brain is wired, based on not so much their experience as it is just the way that they are naturally, and how can we fit that in to what the needs are in the company rather than trying to take someone and change them or change their habits. Like that's too much work. It's too much effort. Take people who are actually wired to do things, and you can there's so many fun like psychology assessments out there that help give people almost like a leg up on how to hire the right people. So
it's like the strength
really
finder. The strength finder.
Yeah, that's
and really taking advantage of that. So I'm going to ask you, who was the celebrity couple? Like, I am so intrigued.
Yeah. So her name was Kelly Pickler, and then her husband is Kyle Jacobs. And in the Nashville community, in the songwriter community, Kyle is very well known. He's written many, 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 many number one songs for a lot of people. Garth Brooks, probably the most well-known icon in country music.
Wow.
But, it was just very interesting because people think that if you're in the public eye and you're the one on the stage singing, that, you're just like a gazillionaire. You walk and money comes out. And it's a totally different ballgame in the music world.
Right.
And there's people behind the scenes that no one really knows who they are, who are far more ahead in building wealth rather than, being in the public eye, which is a hard job. And I really got to see that being around that, and again, you do one and you earn their trust. And then her management and her agency, we still work with them today. And so a lot of the artists that we have had the opportunity to work with, all came by just being an honest, good person, like to the management, because so many people try to screw them. And I'm like, I'm not here to screw anybody. Like, we treat everybody the same. The difference with our celebrity weddings is that it's a lot more work, and you have to really watch what you do, what you say, who you bring in to work on the events. Yes, NDAs and all that is involved, but it's just fans are crazy, like in a good way, not a bad way. Like, they're excited for you, but then you do have crazy people that it's just a lot of security and a lot of paperwork. And I don't want to say like lying, but a lot of vagueness where, you just don't offer up a lot of information. Like, you just keep your mouth shut. And, but that's how I was raised. So it really is, perfect, because a lot of people are like, oh, information's power. And, they want to go tell everybody. But these celebrities, like, they have a life too. They're people too. They have feelings too. They have messed up family situations too. And then when you get involved in emotional money spending, like with a wedding, I become friends with a lot of these people. They're just people. They piss in the same pot that we do. It's a whole nother level of awareness that consumers are like, oh, that's so cool. And I'm just like, I wouldn't describe it as cool. It's a lot of work, but I'm always honored when we can, take care of that level of privacy. But every client to us is a VIP client. Like, we literally treat everyone the same. We want everyone to have like that princess magical feeling for weddings. And then for events and corporate stuff, it's like building it around psychology and building it around the guest experience and what you want the guests to feel and see, like when they come in and midpoint, and then when they leave, that's all done around psychology, which there's not a lot of people around the world in the industry who take that approach. So it's fun to do it, and it's fun to teach it too.
Well, I think a lot of, what you're doing has literally been, the foundation has been placed by your experiences growing up, and then also your education that you've had. And while I do believe that everybody's past contributes to where we are today and our future, but I see it like in your life, it's really like coming into play, especially with taking care of high end clients and, handling their privacies, but then also understanding the psychology behind that. But tell me something, what are some of the challenges that you face? I know you said that, I just said yes, but sometimes that yes is hard also. And sometimes managing clients can be tough, and even educating people can be tough. So what are some challenges, and how did it help you grow?
So my first huge challenge was saying yes to everything. Like, it's like, yeah, we can help. Yeah, we can help. Yeah, we can help. And it helped build a really solid reputation without social media before that existed. And I'm not saying I would go back and change it, but there are things I would change, and I would have put boundaries in place much sooner, because it's like I had no boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there were days where I would stay up for 3 days straight, no sleep, work at the hospital in the morning. Again, not that I really had to. It was never about the money for me, ever. It was more about the people. And I loved recruiting the doctors, and also like being in the know on the inside of like all the numbers in the healthcare industry. And then I still was like teaching gymnastics, and then, had this business on the side. And so my focus was just all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
but I was so dedicated to other people. And my mom and dad were like, if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to take care of anyone. Like, I was always so tired and so drained. And then I got this horrible reputation in my city where it's like, oh, Angela's a robot. She doesn't need to sleep. Like, she'll answer emails at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning, because that's the only time I could actually get work done when everybody else is sleeping. And like, that's not healthy. It's not a healthy balance at all. And the second challenge that I faced was I hired my friends and my family. Now, my family, we grew up in a family business. We all still work together. My brother owns a security company and a background check company. My sister used to work in my company before she had 4 kids. And, so our family's very close. Like, we would never let each other down. But hiring my friends because they needed a job, or a lot of them were in pharmaceuticals. They were getting laid off at the time. And they're like, can we come and help? So they would come and work on the weekends, which Monday through Thursday, I am like carefree, fun. No one's dying. Like, we all make mistakes, which turn into opportunities. But then whenever, like, I don't know, I'm like trying to think of stories of things that have like happened over time that could like really be impactful. But long story short, sometimes friends can work out. For me, it did not.
Yeah.
And I just needed warm bodies. I just needed people, which on the weekends, I mean, business, like I'm in GSD mode, and, I'm super flexible, but it's like, we have 50-page timelines, and we have 55 plus vendors on everything that we do. And so I don't like being in control, and I don't like being the mommy of everything, but somebody's got to do it. And I just happen to be good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And, being that person that everyone comes to felt good. But then when you take a step back and you think about it, it's like, how am I ever going to get anything done?
Right.
And so at a Christmas party one year, I built a new house, and I was so excited, and I had my team over, 12 people who were all my friends as well. And it did not go well. They were like, I'm resigning from the hospital. Like, I'm going to do this full time. And they're like, well, is this going to take money away from me? And I mean, at the time, no one was paying what I was paying, like a day rate to show up, be given an iPad, and like run some things. Listen, the weekend and the event day, that's the easy part. If you plan it the right way, and you have a strategy, and you have good communication, and you have a plan upon a backup plan, depending on weather and things like that, things should be fairly smooth on the event day. So I had to learn, like, it wasn't about me. And pretty much I hired a business manager that year and an accountant. And he's like, you have to start over. Like, you can't have your friends working for you. Like, they're never going to like really understand the growth and like the things that you've been doing in the background. They're not staying up 3 nights in a row planning for 200 hours for the past year with these people. And you shouldn't even try to have the conversation with them, because they don't understand. So you're wasting your breath. And it was just a big pivotal moment. He's like, we're going to put an internship program together, and then you're going to get interns from the schools, and that's how you're going to build your team. And I'm like, why would people want to follow me? But at the time, people were like, oh, I want to be a wedding planner. So he helped me write an intern program. We applied with the schools. My first intern, I ended up hiring her. So she was like my first assistant employee, who was huge into Apple. And I was on PC at the time. She's like, you have to change to Apple. And she like helped me shift over. And all my people have been with me for years. Some of them, she got engaged and moved, I think like after 7 years. I mean, I'm still in touch with like all these people, that work. And I'm always so proud of them. It's like, people get so upset when people leave them or leave their company for a bigger opportunity, or just something that they're not being fulfilled. It's not your fault. Like, don't take it personal. Like, I'm the biggest cheerleader for, these people who want to go out and grow. But the funny thing is, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And so, sometimes people want to come back, but that's the other challenge that I face, is just hiring the right people. And it is hard and people come and go, and it's really hard to trust people. But at the core of it, I learned that processes are so important. And learning how other people learn is everything. So I learned through video. YouTube has not always been around. But we've had this video library of where we record our screens and we keep up with the library so that people know as new people are coming into the system, because the way we do things is very different. Just by like not using paper is one thing. And I would say like the last like biggest challenge for me was just prioritizing my time. And so once I learned how to have different buckets, you have a personal bucket, you have a work bucket, which is like all your meetings where you have to be there. Then you have a to-do list, which usually comes from those work meetings, which now I teach people, put your to-do list on your calendar and time block it. If it doesn't exist on my calendar, it doesn't exist. Like it doesn't. Like when I'm traveling internationally, I even put sleep, like 8 hours sleep on my calendar. I'm like psycho about it now. And, so over the years, it's just learning how to do those things, setting boundaries, and then also trusting others. And usually 99% of the time, all the mistakes that have that have been made in my company, it's my fault because I didn't explain it the way they needed to hear it. Or, and this happens all the time, I give them what I think is enough information. And then all my team, they've learned to clarify. It's my favorite word. We have a word in a song every year of like different things. And it's like, we like to make things fun. And I like to involve all the people in like all the changes. I mean, it's never easy, when you're running things, but having that key person, you could call it second in command. You could call it EA. You could call an assistant, operations director, manager, whatever it is. It's like having that person that can delegate out to other people to free up your time is everything. Like I would rather not eat. I would rather not have a nice car or anything than have that right hand, because if you're executing and working in the business rather than on the business, 100% of the time, nothing's going to grow, nothing will change, and you're a hamster on a wheel. Exactly. And I knew that I wanted something different. So, I built this monster. I didn't ask for it, but when things happen, it's like, okay, we hired consultants and I joined a few organizations to really learn how to do it. And it's not the fun part, but the rewards that come from it and the pros that come from it, it can be painful going through it, but there's always a positive payoff.
Right.
And I mean, that was the biggest thing. I mean, I could go on and on about so many challenges, but we even had it last year when the pandemic hit. I mean, 8 figures of revenue, in 72 hours was just completely pulled out from under us. And like, everyone's looking at me. What are we going to do? I'm like, you guys need to shut up for 2 weeks. I need you to stop asking me questions and I need to whiteboard some things out. I need to think about it. So just everybody needs to chill. It was me putting my foot down, quit texting me, quit Marco Poloing me, quit emailing, like stop. But we communicated that to all of our clients. And then the lead infectious disease person who was like in charge of our city was my groom years ago. So I had like a little bit of insight we thought it was going to be 2 weeks. And he's like, oh no, Ange, like you will not do another event this year and you need to be prepared. And I'm like, oh shit, like you're serious.
Yeah.
So, but again, that goes back to in the very beginning when we started talking. Yes. It's the relationships and me texting him and be like, hey, Amir, sorry to bother you, like maybe in surgery, but like I did your wedding and how many people right now are just. And so just having that real raw trust, and like, I don't go out and tell people like, well, Amir said, it's just like when you're in a press release and you're on TV, got to play the part. But I'm like, just be real with me, dude. And I was able to put some things together and we started helping people with content creation. My friends had time to like start a podcast and write a book and build a personal brand and build a speaking brand. Well, I'd already done all that. And we kept it going and we pivoted from doing, in person on site at different resorts, podcasts with B-roll to freaking Zoom. And do it. But the connections and the relationships built are so amazing. And I wouldn't have that if I was like, didn't have that opportunity to just slow down, Stop and slow down and stop all the notifications and like the rat race and get your arms around what you're going to do and like what your time needs to be. So I would just say like every year, at least once a year, like go away somewhere where and you tell people, don't just like fall off the grid, put an email out of office, tell your social media following, tell your audience, like any misunderstanding is always miscommunication. And I always will take the fault for it. But then there's times where it's like, well, we've told you that multiple times. So at some point you have to take accountability, but people are just frazzled. They're busy, and again, also setting goals. Like I have a goal for a travel goal, like I want to visit this year, the 7 wonders of the world. And so with that, like there's a strategy to reach out to properties, to reach out to brands that we work with to say, hey, you have a new property here. Can we come there and do a podcast? Well, so I'm there, working and creating content and dancing and teaching people how to get comfortable in front of video. But it's not so random because you build relationships along the way. And then, which brings me to other cities and other countries, but it's all about follow up and follow through.
Yeah.
And
so I feel like from the challenges that you've shared with us today, that some of the things that really pop out and stand out is the fact that you are very intentional behind everything that you are doing. There's a lot of strategy that's coming out. And you're also keeping in mind of what's priority, whether it is your sleep or whether it is the time block to work on the business as in the business, or whether it's connecting with others, around you. Now, I know you briefly talked about the 3 buckets, and our time is coming up also. So I really want to also address this with you. We were earlier before we started the show, you were talking about the 4 Ps. Now, does that relate to the 3 buckets that you're talking about, or are they kind of separate? Or can you talk a little bit about that so people can kind of get a better idea of how to be intentional in their strategies and in their prioritizations?
Yeah. So when you're setting a company culture, really for us, it's all about the 4 Ps. And as business owners, we overcomplicate things, which y'all, I still do it to myself. Okay. And then, I have a coach, I get a new mentor every year, and they're like, you're making this way too difficult. Like, just keep it simple. If you're confused, your people are confused. If your people are confused, your consumers are confused, your clients are confused, everybody's confused. So it's really important to understand. So for us, like the 4 Ps is just the foundation of the company culture. And so the first P is people, and hire people based off their personality for the right things. We all do things we don't want to do. Trust me, everything I ask someone else to do, I've done it myself. And I still hold people's hair back while they're puking in commodes at parties. Like, you do what you have to do,
Yeah.
But the right people strategically is so important. That's the first P. The second P is processes. And so having a process for everything you do. And it is painful. It's like, oh, I got to sit down and build out a process, make a video, start a Google Doc. But if you put the work in up front, you're buying yourself back so much time in the future.
Yes.
And then update those things, every year, because things change. And then the third P is all about productivity, which comes in the form of time blocking. How to be the most productive you can be using technology. People are afraid of technology. It's not going to bite you. You might mess some things up. You might lose some things, but you learn from it and you can be proactive. And so it's all about automation as well. Like, the more you can automate, again, it's the same thing with processes. It's like when you take the time to set it up and take a week out of your business on serving clients, and you serve yourself. And so my mindset is treat myself like a client. And as soon as I started to do that, I mean, even in my Dropbox and even in our Google Drive, like my personal brand and the company brand were listed as clients. You would never set up a client. So why do you continuously let yourself down? At least I did. And so, but that all comes with like time blocking and having boundaries, like up under technology, automation, productivity. And then the last but not least, if you're a business owner, understanding profitability. And that's something that, for the first 10 years of my business, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And it hurt that I was doing over 250 events a year and we had no profit. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, oh, all the other planners have 3 packages and this is how they do it. And then I had a consultant come in and he was like, I don't care what Susie Q's doing down the road. And I don't care. you're not married, you don't have kids, you have all these people that you have to provide to put food on their table and support their families. And then I have my own family that, my dad was sick. My sister got sick. She has 4 kids. It's like I was able to step out of my company for a good 6 months and help my mother with my father, help my sister with the kids. I still help with the kids. I never let people see that side of me for a long time. And then other women started saying to me, in fact, on podcasts, like, oh, you don't understand. You're not married. You don't have kids. And I'm like, well, I was married. It's a choice. I got a divorce for a reason. We weren't compatible. We weren't best friends anymore. And that's okay. He's a good guy. Just he wants to devote his life to the military. And I didn't grow up like that. So it's just not going to work. And I'm not going to follow him around like a lot of the military wives do. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't for me. And, so that's a choice. It's a choice. And so when you have the right people around you and you know your numbers, which again is not the sexy part, when you have the capacity to step out or the capacity to hire someone else, so to free up your time more. Right. And, for me, it sucks because it took my dad and my sister in the same year getting sick for me to understand the value of money and time. And it's priceless. My dad always said, honey, you can make more money. You can't buy the time back. And it's so precious. And he's like, I don't have much longer. Like, I want you to, be around. And it's like awful to watch a parent like go through these things. But at the same time, I felt very grateful, but also empowered that I had a team and I just had to let them handle it. And everything was not perfect. But guess what? When I came back, they grew so much.
Right.
And from that experience about 6 years ago, this is why I am able to travel around the world and still stay very connected to my team and teach them that you're going to mess up and we all mess up, but it teaches us to better communicate. But all of the foundation of that is understanding the numbers. And listen, if you're not good at it, outsource it, get an accountant, get a bookkeeper. That was like the first hire that I did was an accountant and then like a business manager and then a brand manager. And, get people around you that can help you have the foundation of like whatever it is, for us in our company, it's 4 Ps. Like this is just an outline that's easy to remember. It doesn't really so much correlate with like the buckets as, the buckets are like the work, the to do, your personal, and that's just your priorities.
Productivity.
And then you got to go back and and time block with productivity. Yeah. So
I think the buckets would be related to the productivity aspect of it.
Absolutely.
And then because, it's important, people, productivity, profitability. And what was the other P that you said?
People. So the most like people is you got to have the right people, got to have the processes. And
yes.
Yep. And then the productivity and the profitability piece.
Yeah. They're all so important. And I know that I've personally spoken about processes so many times and people, the right hires. And I think really leveraging into something like Strength Finders or something like that, it really helps understand how to communicate properly also with certain types of people and also the type of person you are. And so it really, really is helpful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I almost feel like I want to have you come back and really dive deeper into the 4 Ps because that is something that is super helpful. Do you have anything that would help a listener on the 4 Ps, like an opt-in or? So I'll put that link into the show notes as well then for you so that they can like link into that and see what you're talking about, because I know that you have such good information on, just simple things of how to market yourself a little bit better on social media. And, just your Instagram account is also so cool. And what is your Instagram account?
It's Angela Proffitt. So, well, we have a company account, GSD Creative, but business stuff goes on there. And then on my personal brand business account under Instagram, which is just my name, we give tips, but it's a little bit more of like, I integrate the kids into it and it's my life.
Yeah.
And just showing people and again, like you have control over what you put out.
Yeah.
And there's so much perception. And when you don't tell a full story about something, people make up a story in their head, not because they're liars, but as human beings, we need to connect the dots. And when we don't connect the dots as business owners and fully communicating, then people make things up. And again, I take fault for that. I'm like, if I'm not clear on something, that's my fault. But the perception of what you're putting out, it can do good and then it can do not so good. So it's just like, be clear, on your social media. We really, the behind the scenes strategy of it is there's three things, that we really focus on, like the workshops and then speaking and then events. And so weaved throughout different videos and pictures and whatnot, like there's, an actual strategy behind it. It doesn't look that way, to the public eye, because I want it to be fun. I want it to be approachable. I want people to see that and come to the workshops and be like, oh my God, do I have to dance? And I'm like, well, you don't have to. I mean, I grew up a dancer. You don't have to be a good dancer, and you don't have to, and you don't even have to show your face, actually.
Yeah.
But when you do show your face and when you do show that fun side of yourself, it actually like breaks down walls.
Yeah.
And you're more approachable. People see you more as a person. And for so many years, I was so consumed with being perfect on social media because we sell perfection. You have one chance to get a wedding right. Well, sometimes 2 and 3 times. We've had repeat I love it. I love them. But it's all good because I've been there. I've been in that situation and I understand how they feel. I'm like, you don't have to give me any excuses. And then if I have a couple where I'm like, this just isn't going to work. Like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, I have no problem being honest, telling people that, and people respect that. But yeah, having the strategy behind it is really important.
Oh, I agree. Strategies are on key. Like you have to have that and literally take time out. Like we've talked about, take time out to develop those strategies, develop your goals and how to get to that. And so follow you because it's really fun. You bring a lot of joy into my daily life when I see you dancing. It's truly like, it brings a smile to the face. So I love that. Of course, this is Law Chat and I ultimately always somehow put this at the end, but what is some legal experience, whether it's bad or good or something that you're like, yes, you have to do this, like a tip, would you share with the listeners today?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you have to have an attorney. Like you have to, even if it's somebody that is, on retainer or you pay as you go, but like the best thing that I ever did, every year we update I like to call it a service agreement. Like I hate contract. You have to have a contract. You have to, again, it's not clear and it's more to protect you and your company and the client as well. But it's like the best money I ever spent because every year, again, like we didn't have a COVID clause, like we had acts of God or, whatever. Yeah. And the only time we've really had to fall back on contracts is, in the past 2 decades is that people forget like what they're getting kind of thing and like what they're actually paying for. And so like, that's a good reminder. And then, over the years, we've started so many businesses, online businesses, multiple LLCs. I'm part of multiple companies and without an attorney, it is just messy. And I've got a trademark attorney, like literally in my favorites, like on my phone, Jake. And we've worked together for years and it's like, I go to him for like all like IP things. Well, when all this brand stuff started to come up, like brands started to reach out and they're like, well, you can do affiliate marketing, you can do this and you can do that. Well, you still have to have a contract. It's like, okay, I'll do 3 videos with this product and promise this. But again, it needs to be clear and it needs to be in writing. And that's what attorneys do. And it's like, without that, I probably wouldn't be in business without, like, and I could tell like so many stories. I've been subpoenaed to court multiple times, not for anything that we did in our business, but other circumstances. And, I don't get upset and I don't cry on the stand or anything. It's just like, just get up there and like answer their questions, tell the truth. But from a legal standpoint, like I always felt very confident because I had an attorney, and it's different in every city, every state, every country. There's a lot of great content out there that can like help you as an umbrella, no matter where you are in the world. But then when it comes to actually like your business and your contracts and what you're doing is so important. Even yesterday, the latest thing, you may know this, my friend who owns a large company in town got sued because her website was not ADA compliant, and which I'm like, what?
That's a
What-
thing. That's a
what do
thing.
you
I had been
mean?
saying, I talked about this last year that hello, ADA compliance is required now, and you're going to get sued if you're not, especially the bigger you are. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like finding loopholes. And then I had another friend. So her attorney, like, I mean, they're still in the middle of this big lawsuit. And it was, the thing is, like, the family, they're so awesome. It was never intentional at all. It was just, they didn't know what they didn't know. So they have a great attorney representing them now for that. And then even like small things on your website, like the terms and conditions and the policy, like if you have an email list, like you asked about an opt-in, it's like we have gsdsecrets.com, which is a free video series about the 4 Ps. And then we do have an academy called GSD Academy, all about productivity and like just getting shit done as a business owner.
I was going to ask you, what does GSD stand for? And you just said it. I love it.
Get shit done.
Yeah.
It's memorable. And like, it's just, I always say, like, the most important thing is GSD, doing things you love and things that bring you passion. And you can do your passion and make a living out of it and making money at it. I'm a walking poster child for it. But again, you have to surround yourself with the right people. But these attorneys and like the things, just like with the laws that keep coming up. And for a few years, things are very unregulated, just like it was in the pharma business. And then they put regulations in place. And if you don't keep up with that, sometimes I'm like, is it my attorney's job to reach out to me and like, tell me these things? Or like, is it my job to stay on top? It's your job as a business owner to stay on top of these things. It's not unless you have someone on retainer, which a lot of us
not
don't,
even unless you have in-house attorney, like retainer attorney, it's not their responsibility because they're really focusing on whatever the scope is at the time that you're helping them. And for them to have to go to every single client and update them, I think that's a lot of work, but it's a great business idea. But yeah. But you're right. And so it's so funny because knowingly, unknowingly, ignorance is never an excuse or a defense in court. And so, but you need to be, it's a great point because a lot of business owners don't even know this, that you need to be ADA compliant on your website. And some of those things can just be even having videos, but then having subtitles on the bottom for people to read, or having, in a way where if they can't see, but they can hear the background. It's just something like having alternatives that are available to the user of your website. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
you're
so
not
needed.
Around it.
Contracts, agreements.
Yes.
Totally. If it's like the first few things that you would be doing for your company would be getting an agreement in place with the other business partners that you're working with all the time. And then knowing the intellectual property that you are creating. So whether it's a trademark or whether it's copyright stuff or whether it's patents or other trade secrets, whatever, but it's something that you need to be aware of and you will start protecting from day 0, not day 1. So it's absolutely necessary. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I'm going to definitely put the link to your website and then the link to the 4 Ps and how to do that. And then, of course, your Instagram handle as well. Angela, it's been so nice chatting with you and having all of your wisdom and your amazing infectious energy with us today. I love it. Love, love, love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So much fun. We'll have to do it again.
Yes, we will. I actually want to bring you back in to talk about the 4 Ps. So there you go. Yay. Well, if you are not following Angela, follow her and go and listen to her podcast. Also, I have been a guest on that podcast as well.
Yep.
It has amazing information there as well. Again, a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye, y'all.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girija. I just love these kind of conversations that are motivating, inspiring, but truthful, raw, and honest about all of the challenges, all of the victories, all of the triumphs, picking ourselves back up again. I just can't think of a better way to get mentorship but Law Chat with Girija. If this was helpful to you or this was inspiring to you, please share the love. You can give this video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to this channel. You can also share this with your community by taking a screenshot and posting it on your social media and tagging GBP Law. When you do that, a lot more people will be able to see this video that not only benefited you, but also can benefit them as well. So let's share that love and let's share that inspiration. And if you want more information about what I do and other resources, go check out gbplaw.com or yourcontractbuddy.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.